Daily routines often look stable from a distance, but inside a home, they tend to shift from day to day. A task that happens in the morning one week may move to the evening the next. Weekend time opens up certain activities while workdays compress them. Seasonal changes do the same thing. Outdoor tasks expand in some months and narrow in others. Because of that, many household routines are not defined only by intention. They are shaped by how many steps a task requires before it can even begin. Some routines stay consistent because the object involved is already present, already placed, and easy to return to. A coat hangs near the door. A notebook stays on the same table. A tool sits on a shelf in the garage, ready to be picked up when time allows. Other routines are less stable because they begin with setup. The person has to gather materials, clear a surface, decide where to start, and remember what comes next. The more preparation a routine requires, the more likely it is to be delayed, interrupted, or divided into separate sessions. An instructional homesteading product in book format exists inside this kind of routine structure. It is not a device that runs on its own and not an object that performs a task passively in the background. It is a reference object. It enters a daily environment the way manuals, binders, field guides, and workbooks do. It waits between periods of use, then reappears when a household task needs structure. In that sense, it belongs to the category of routine objects that are consulted, reopened, and used in pieces. The physical format here begins with the book itself. It is a bound object that can be held in the hands, carried from room to room, set on a table, opened flat beside tools, or left with a marker between pages. Its size matters because it determines where it tends to live inside a home. A book of this type may stay on a kitchen table for a few days, then move to a shelf, a workbench, a nightstand, or a storage bin with other project materials. It can exist as a visible object in the room, even when no one is actively reading it. Alongside the printed book, the format also includes digital companion materials. These do not replace the book physically, but they extend the same structure into screens and files. In a home setting, that means the product may appear in two forms at once. The printed object may be open on a surface, while a digital file is checked on a phone, tablet, or computer. One version may stay indoors while the other is carried closer to the site of the task. The format is still instructional, but it moves across different physical settings depending on where the routine is happening. As an object, the book is not visually isolated from its environment. It tends to accumulate routine signs around it. A folded corner, a slip of paper used as a marker, notes in the margin, soil on the lower edge from being handled near a garden bed, a mug ring on the cover from being left on a kitchen table. In a workshop or utility area, it may sit beside tape measures, pencils, seed packets, screws, gloves, extension cords, or jars. In a living room or office, it may be stacked with catalogs, notebooks, and printed plans. Its presence is not decorative. It is part of the working surface. The structure of the material also affects how it behaves as an object in use. This is not a single continuous reading format like a novel. It is organized by topic sections, chapter-based content, project collections, illustrations, diagrams, and step-by-step segments. That means the routine is usually non-linear. A person does not need to begin at the first page and continue straight through. The object can be opened to one section, used for 10 minutes, closed, and then reopened later in a different place. The interaction is modular. That modular structure creates a specific physical pattern. The book is picked up when a decision point appears in the routine. It is open to a known section or searched visually for a relevant page. The user reads a portion, studies a diagram, compares the page to the real environment, and then shifts attention back to the task area. There is a back and forth motion between reference and action. Hands move from page to surface, from surface to materials, and then back to the page again. In that way, the object does not replace activity. It sits just beside it. The repetition pattern is also different from objects used once per day at fixed times. A book-based format does not usually anchor itself to a single clock time. Instead, it anchors to recurring task windows. It may be used in the morning while planning the day, in the afternoon during setup, or in the evening when reviewing the next step. Its rhythm follows projects, seasons, and available time. One week, it may be opened every day. Another week, it may remain closed and visible on a shelf. Then it returns when the next module of work begins. The level of setup required is moderate, but it is not zero. Unlike a single-purpose household object that involves one immediate motion, this format begins with retrieval and orientation. The user has to locate the relevant section, understand the step sequence, and match it to the current stage of the task. At the same time, it requires less setup than routines that begin with full independent planning from scratch. The book reduces some of the decision load by holding the sequence in a fixed physical form. The next page is already there. The chapter order already exists. The diagrams are already arranged. For some routine preferences, this matters. Some people tend toward low decision structures where the object itself contains the next step. They prefer routines that can resume after interruption without rebuilding the whole sequence mentally. In those cases, a printed instructional format works as a stabilizing object. It keeps the routine externally organized. The page becomes part of the workspace. The finger placed on a line of text, the bookmark left between sections, and the open spread on the table all act as physical placeholders within the task. Other people prefer repeatable physical steps rather than open-ended planning. For them, the value of the format is not in reading for long periods, but in using the book as a reference checkpoint. The same motion repeats: open, locate, review, act, return. A diagram may be checked several times in one session. A chapter heading may become a familiar marker. The object begins to function less like a reading item and more like a routine surface that is revisited in short intervals. There are also people who prefer pre-measured formats in general. In a household context, that means they tend to work more easily when the task is already divided into sections, categories, and numbered pieces. A product organized into chapters, project groups, and illustrated steps matches that preference because it reduces the need to create a structure before acting. The structure is already embedded in the object. By contrast, some routine styles lean toward preparation-based systems that involve more assembly before any action begins. A food-based routine, for example, often requires gathering ingredients, clearing space, measuring, mixing, adjusting, and cleaning afterward. A mixing-based format introduces containers, tools, proportions, and timing choices. A multi-step preparation format usually contains variation each time because the materials, order, and exact conditions may shift. Those routines depend more heavily on setup and on managing several moving parts before the repeated action can settle into place. A book-based instructional format sits differently on that spectrum. It still involves steps, but the object itself is already assembled. The pages are fixed, the sections are grouped, the diagrams stay in the same place every time. The user does not prepare the format before using it. The user prepares the environment around it. A table is cleared, a pen is placed nearby, materials are gathered. Then the book enters the routine as the stable reference point within that changing setup. This makes the physical interaction narrower and more repeatable than preparation-heavy routines. The motions are consistent. Pick up the book, open to a section, hold a page flat. Compare the illustration to the real task. Close it or leave it open. Move to the next physical step in the environment. Return again. Digital companion materials follow a similar structure but with different gestures. A file is opened on a screen, enlarged, scrolled, or set beside the workspace. The role stays the same even when the format shifts from paper to screen. When compared with routines built around full preparation from raw materials, this kind of product remains closer to consultation than assembly. The user is assembling the project, not the format. The format arrives already organized, and the routine is built around repeated reference, partial reading, visual checking, and staged return to the page as the household task continues across rooms, surfaces, and seasons until the next module is opened and the object is placed back into use again.